All right, well, this is the final installment of our exciting journey through converting units. And this time, we're going to throw a little bit of an extra um, detail into the mix, and we're going to be talking about converting rates. So things like miles per hour to feet per second, or miles per gallon to feet per gallon, or something like that. So we're going to be changing a rate to another rate. And when we have that, you might have to change both of your units or only one of your units. So we're going to look at a couple examples of each situation. And in these cases, they are giving us information about that unit conversion that we're going to need. So they're giving us a little piece of info to help us out. So we're going to try to use that as much as possible. So let's look at the first one. It says the Green Landscape Company needs 48 meters of fencing to enclose a plot. The cost of fencing is $3.95 per running foot. What is the cost of the fence to the nearest dollar? Now, first thing, just so you know, a running foot just means like it's basically just like a regular old foot. It just happens to be a running foot because they're enclosing a certain amount of space. So if I could draw a straight line, it would be great, but pretend like those are straight. If a running foot would just be the measurement along the perimeter of this figure. So it's really no different than a regular old foot, just so you don't get confused about the basics of it. So what I need to do, first of all, is let's write down what rate they gave me. They gave me dollars per foot. So I'm going to write that down first, $3.95 per 1 foot. Now, before you do anything else, you need to figure out where do you need to go with this. They're asking you, which means go back to the question. What is the cost, meaning how many dollars does it cost of fence to the nearest dollar, but they need 48 meters. So what we really need to know is the cost per meter. So dollars will stay the same. What's going to change is this feet. We need to convert that part of that rate to meters instead. So my end result, I'm going to fill this in over here, is going to be dollars per meter. That's our goal. That's what we're shooting for. So let's just jot that down so we know where we need to get to. Okay, now we have to use that same idea of a unit conversion. Now, they are telling me that 1 meter is approximately the same as 1.09 yards. Well, I don't have yards. I have feet. So the first thing that I would probably want to do is change my feet to yards using a conversion factor. So I know that there are either 3 feet in 1 yard, or I could say 1 yard is equivalent to 3 feet. Those are the two options of Mr. 1 that I have to use here for my unit conversion. Now, keeping in mind, remember, I don't want feet to be in here. So remember that idea of crossing out our units. If I have feet in the denominator and I want to get rid of those feet, that means I need to multiply by something that has feet in the numerator so I can cross these two suckers out. So that means of these two choices for Mr. 1, it's a little bit of a shady looking one, I'm going to use this one because I want feet on the top, yards on the bottom. So I'm going to put in 3 feet is equivalent to 1 yard. There's my Mr. 1. Okay, now let's go ahead and cross these out. Feet and feet, gone. Now, the problem is I'm not done. I've got price per yard, but I want per meter. So now this is where I'm going to use this information they gave me. They told me that 1 meter is equivalent to 1.09 yards, or I could say 1 yard, or whoops, sorry, my mistake, 1.09 yards is equivalent to 1 meter. Now, knowing that my yards are in the bottom, that means I should put yards up here in the top because I want to get rid of those. That means of these two options, I'm going to go with the second one because it has yards in the top. So I put 1.09 right here, and then 1 meter. And then let's cross out. So I have yards here, I have yards here. Now, look at what you have left. The only unit on any of those numerators is dollars. And what do I want? I want dollars. Down on the bottom, the only thing I have left here is meters. And that's exactly what I want. So now I'm just going to multiply straight across. I'm going to multiply here. I'm going to multiply straight across here and put my amount here. And then on the bottom, multiply straight across and get my bottom number. So go ahead and take your calculator, punch that in, and fill those numbers in. All right, so once you multiply it, you end up with $12.91 per meter. And the problem told us to round to the nearest dollar. So that's going to be approximately $13 for 1 meter of fencing. And that, my friends, is your final answer. There you go. All right, let's try number 2. It says the track team jogs 5 miles every day. About how many kilometers do they jog each week? So the very first thing is we want to write down the rate they gave us. So the rate they told us is 5 miles per 1 day. The question is, where do we want to take this? What are they asking? They want to know kilometers per week. So that's where I want to end up over here. Kilometers per week. Well, now if you look, we have to change 2 things. We need to change miles to kilometers and days to weeks. So this is where it's going to get a little bit dicey. This is a little more involved than the last one, but it's the exact same idea. So first, I'm going to change miles to kilometers. Don't try to do both things at the same time because it's not going to work. Let's change miles to kilometers. So don't worry about the day on the bottom. Just leave that alone. I want you to pause me and figure out what conversion factor would you multiply. What Mr. 1 do you multiply by here to get the miles to cancel out and kilometers to be left on top? So go ahead and pause me and do that on your own. All right, how did you do? Hopefully you used this piece of information they gave you, 1.6 kilometers per 1 mile. There's my Mr. 1, and look right here, miles and miles will cross out. So I'm going to be left with kilometers on the top, which is exactly what I want right here. Okay, now, next phase is going to be, we're going to multiply by 1 more conversion factor. We need to change days into weeks. That means we need to get rid of days and change that to weeks. So you should be able to figure out the relationship between days and a week and figure out what conversion factor you should use there. So go ahead and pause me again. Fill in your Mr. 1 to get the days to cross out. All right, this time I have 7 days in 1 week, so my day will cross out with days. Even though it's plural, it still crosses out. And on the bottom, we will be left with week. So we will have week on the bottom. So that means we've got our units exactly where we want. All we have to do now is multiply. So we're just going to multiply all the numerators together and all the denominators together. Go ahead and multiply those out. Pause me and multiply. All right, and hopefully you ended up with the final answer of 56 kilometers per week. And there is your answer. All right, last one. This one is fairly similar to the one above. So we're going to start off with the same thing. What is the speed in feet per minute of a car traveling 65 miles per hour? So again, we write down the rate that we're given. We are told 65 miles per 1 hour. Where do we want this to convert to? We want to change it to feet per minute. So we want feet on the top and minute on the bottom. That's our goal. Now, we have two things to convert. Miles need to convert to feet. Hours needs to convert to minutes. So let's start with, I always usually just do the top one first to make my life easier. So I'm going to change miles to feet. So that means I need to know how many feet are in a mile, and hopefully you remember that already. If you don't, I will give you a hint. There are 5,280 feet in 1 mile. Go ahead and pause me, and I want you to figure out which conversion factor you should use, which Mr. 1 should you multiply by to get rid of the miles. Okay, so my miles, I used 5,280 feet over 1 mile. Is that what you used? I hope so. And by using that, miles will cross out with miles, and we will be left with feet on top, which is exactly what we want. Now, our next Mr. 1 needs to change hours to minutes. So go ahead and use determine which conversion factor you need. What Mr. 1 you will use to get those hours to cross out. Pause me and then come on back. Okay, so the Mr. 1 that I used was 1 hour over 60 minutes. I hope you use the same, because I will get hours on the bottom to cross out with hours on top. And what I will be left with is minutes on the bottom, which is exactly what I want right here. So since I've got the 2 units that I want, all I have to do now is multiply straight across. And let's see what we get. So go ahead and pause me, do your multiplication, and then come on back in just a minute. Okay, so once you multiply 65 times 5,280 times 1, you should have come up with 343,200 feet per, we have a 60 minutes on the bottom, per 60 minutes. So that is an answer, but it's kind of a messy answer. And the question said, what is the speed in feet per minute? So what they're really asking is, how many feet does the car go in 1 minute? So we need to clean this up a little bit. So I just rewrote my rate down here, and I'm going to divide by Mr. 1. I have the units exactly what I want, except this number, I want to know how many feet per 1 minute. So that means I should divide by a Mr. 1 of 60 over 60, just to make it a little bit easier to understand. So obviously the bottom will be 1 minute. And on the top, do a little division. And we get 5,720 feet in 1 minute. So think about that the next time you're driving along with your parents in the car on the highway and you're going 65 miles per hour. Your car is actually covering 5,720 feet in 1 minute's time. That's a lot. So there you have it, everybody. If you have questions, let me know, and happy converting. Bye-bye.